From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired!
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Eric Ham and we're live in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump takes shots while his running mate prepares to face off with his political opponent in tonight's presidential debate. All of that and more coming up, but first, a look at the latest headlines. Russia to increase its defense spending by 25% starting in 2025. This brings its overall defense budget to $145 billion, which is about 40% of the government's total spending. South Korea holds a massive military parade involving tanks, troops, and fighter jets to mark the country's 76th Armed Forces Day. Seoul unveils its homegrown ballistic missile for the first time ever. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration says it will work towards peace in the Middle East by officially recognizing Palestine as a state. This as Canada condemns Israel's actions in Gaza and the West Bank. Argentinian President Javier Milei hosts his El Salvadoran counterpart Nayib Bukele in Buenos Aires. The two leaders discuss bilateral trade, Bitcoin, and nuclear energy. And almost 45,000 dock workers go on strike from Maine to Texas, demanding higher wages and a total ban on automated cranes and trucks. The strike affects at least 36 ports in the United States and is estimated to cost the U.S. economy $4 billion per day. We begin in the Middle East, where Israeli forces have launched a ground operation in southern Lebanon, marking another escalation in their ongoing offensive against Hezbollah. This comes just days after Israel killed Hezbollah chief Hassan Nasrallah in airstrikes on Lebanon's capital, Beirut. And announcing the ground offensive, the Israeli Defense Forces said the incursion would be limited, localized, and based on precise intelligence.
In accordance with the decision of the political echelon, a few hours ago, the IDF began limited, localized, and targeted ground raids based on precise intelligence against Hezbollah terrorist targets and infrastructure in southern Lebanon. These targets are located in villages close to the border and pose an immediate threat to Israeli communities in northern Israel.
The IDF hasn't given an exact timeline on how long the invasion is expected to last. However, the Israeli army says soldiers have been in preparation for months. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he wants the displaced Israelis to return to their homes in northern Israel, which borders Lebanon.
The elimination of Nasrallah is a necessary condition in achieving the objectives we have set, returning the residents of the north safely to their homes, and changing the balance of power in the region for years. As long as Nasrallah was alive, he would have quickly rebuilt the capabilities we took from Hezbollah. Therefore, I gave the directive, and Nasrallah is no longer with us.
Netanyahu has warned Iran against helping its proxy Hezbollah, saying that there's no place in the Middle East that Israel cannot reach.
There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There's nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss.
Now, the Iran-backed group that could announce its next leader any day now said that it targeted Israeli soldiers in several border areas with rockets and artillery shelling. And Lebanese citizens said Hezbollah remains strong even after Nasrallah's death.
In my opinion, there is only a small possibility that Israel will be able to penetrate because the resistance remains strong. And if Sayyed Hassan Nasrallah is gone, there are thousands of alternatives to Hassan Nasrallah.
The contradiction in the slogans raised by Netanyahu between returning the settlers to the north, removing the threat, and changing the face of the region through a ground incursion reveals the truth of the slogans presented by Netanyahu, which are an escape from the great failure that occurred in Gaza as a result of his inability to achieve the so-called absolute victory in Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu resorted to this step and is trying to push things further forward.
Meanwhile, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin spoke to Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and extended support for Israel's ground operation, saying the country has the right to defend itself.
I spoke with Israeli Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant today to discuss security developments and Israeli operations. I made it clear that the United States supports Israel's right to defend itself. We agreed on the necessity of dismantling attack infrastructure along the border to ensure that Lebanese Hezbollah cannot conduct October 7-style attacks on Israel's northern communities.
Secretary Austin also warned Tehran of serious consequences if it decides to launch a direct attack on Israel. With Washington's backing, Israel is expected to continue its operations against Hezbollah as the Lebanese people face the risk of an all-out war with no place to go. And here in the United States, in the race for the White House, former President Donald Trump has accused President Biden and Vice President Harris of not providing any support to storm-ravaged communities in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. The ex-president questioned the authenticity of a photo posted on Harris's social media account showing her engaged in official duties aboard Air Force Two. In the photo, Kamala Harris says she's talking with officials who briefed her about the impact of the hurricane that has already killed over 130 people so far. The post went viral with more than 40 million views in just 24 hours. With just over a month until voters elect a new president, everything that can become political will become political, especially and including hurricane recovery efforts. The Republican presidential nominee attacked his opponent on Truth Social, saying, quote, "Another fake and staged photo from someone who has no clue what she is doing. You have to plug in the cord into the phone for it to work," end quote. During a visit to hurricane-hit Georgia, Donald Trump said he spoke to billionaire Elon Musk about getting Starlink internet access to the affected areas.
They don't have communication. They don't have anything right now. We're trying to. I just spoke to Elon. I'm getting him. We want to get Starlink hooked up because they have no communication whatsoever. And throughout the region, our hearts are with you, and we are going to be with you as long as you need. It's called an hour of need. You're in our prayers, and we pray to God. And throughout the long weeks that lay ahead, you're going to have a lot of work, but the end result is it's going to be good.
Now, it's important to note the Federal Emergency Management Administration, or FEMA, is already working with Starlink to provide internet access to those hard-hit communities. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris canceled campaign stops on the West Coast to focus on recovery efforts. The Democratic presidential nominee says she herself plans to be on the ground as more than 3,000 personnel assist with recovery efforts in the storm's aftermath.
So far, more than 3,300 federal personnel are on the ground to assist with recovery efforts. They are deploying food, water, and generators. And we continue to work with teams on the ground to restore water and power as quickly as possible. I plan to be on the ground as soon as possible, but as soon as possible without disrupting any emergency response operations, because that must be the highest priority in the first order of business.
Hurricane Helene's destruction has completely upended the key battleground states of both Georgia and North Carolina. In fact, entire communities have been washed away, including homes and businesses. This will make for an uncertain voting infrastructure with just over 30 days to go until the election. And in a race shaped by uncertainty, the level of unknowns has only just been amplified. And staying with the race for the White House, Republican J.D. Vance and Democrat Tim Walz will step onto the stage for their one and only vice presidential debate. The two rivals have taken sharp jabs at each other in the past, and tonight, those simmering tensions could explode on stage. J.D. Vance, the Ohio senator, has courted controversy since his selection to the ticket was announced. His unapologetic style has turned heads and raised eyebrows. From calling Democratic women childless cat ladies to making bizarre claims about Haitian immigrants, Vance has often spread fake news. His fierce defense of Donald Trump and far-right stances on everything from reproductive rights to immigration has defined his campaign. Last week during a rally in Michigan, Vance promised to debate Walz like an adult as he mocked Kamala Harris.
What I'm going to try to show is very simple, that the candidacy, the team of substance, the team that actually has a record that we're proud of instead of we're running away from, and the team that actually has a plan is the team of Trump-Vance. And that's what I'm going to try to do. Is look, I think one of the fundamental differences between Kamala Harris's campaign and Donald Trump's campaign is we speak to our fellow Americans like they're citizens, because they are. Kamala Harris speaks to her fellow Americans like they're children.
Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris running mate Tim Walz is also charged up for the debate. The two-term Minnesota governor is characterized as a happy warrior and is known for being a great orator. Walz has also taken shots at Vance during multiple rallies and has even called the Ohio senator weird and creepy, which really caught on with the American electorate. Still, with all that going on for the former congressman, he still admits his nervousness heading into such a dramatic moment. Right before the debate, Walz visited the battleground state of Michigan and met with voters.
Looking forward to tomorrow, but my thoughts are certainly in the Southeast.
A recent New York Times Siena College poll released on Saturday found that Midwestern voters prefer Walz to Vance. While Walz was viewed favorably by 44% of voters, Vance was viewed unfavorably by 48%. Now, vice presidential debates rarely shape the race for the White House. However, this year could be a turning point as Walz and Vance both look to influence undecided voters.
And after the presidential debate that we watched, we didn't see polls shift a whole lot, even though that debate was fairly explosive and had some pretty, memeable moments. It didn't shift things all that much. So I wouldn't expect this to do much. That being said, we know that this is a very, very, very close race. And so thought about from another perspective, you have maybe 5 or 6% of the electorate still on the fence, still undecided, and little things could push them in one direction or another.
So, as the lights go up at the CBS Broadcast Center in New York, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Vance's bombastic style overpower Walz, or will the Minnesota governor's calm resilience carry him through? Considering the CBS moderators have already announced they will not be fact-checking the candidates in real time, what happens tonight is anyone's guess, just like everything else undergirding the 2024 election. And now on to Europe, where more than 100 years ago, the world's first coal plant opened in the United Kingdom in 1882. And today the country becomes the first major economy to give up on the fossil fuel. Britain's last coal-burning power plant has officially shut down, signaling a bold shift toward renewable energy. But as the UK bids goodbye to coal, many other countries are still deeply reliant on it. What does this mean for the global fight against climate change? Here's the story with more.
Britain's skies will look different today. The smoke that once billowed from towering chimneys is gone. And with it, a chapter of history has closed. The Ratcliffe-on-Soar power plant, which was the last coal-burning giant in the UK, has gone dark. And the country that was once known to be the birthplace of coal power now becomes the first major economy to give it up. But its shutdown came with a dark price. For years, coal was the beating heart of Britain's power. It fueled factories, drove trains, and kept homes warm. But as the world burned it in enormous quantities, our planet began to suffer. Wildfires raged, oceans rose, and storms grew fiercer. And coal, the cheap and abundant fuel, rapidly became the dirtiest source of energy. The UK felt this tension sharply, and by 2013, coal mines began to close. The science behind climate change became clearer, and the urgency to change direction grew stronger. Hence, renewables, once a small fraction of Britain's energy mix, began to take centre stage. Today, over 40% of the UK's electricity comes from wind, solar and other clean sources. It's a remarkable shift for a nation that once produced nearly all its power from coal. Moreover, not only the Green campaigners, but the final coal-fired station's shutdown has also been hailed by its workers, because the ones who have dedicated years to build the coal plant now were given support, retraining and a secured future. This wasn't just an ending, it was a transition to something new. But while Britain turns a page, the coal story isn't over. In places like China and India, coal still burns brightly. In 2022, the world used a record 8.5 billion metric tons of coal, driven largely by these two powerhouses. Yet, there's hope on the horizon. China's coal consumption might peak as soon as it invests in renewables. But the global reliance on coal remains a steep hill to climb. So, as the lights go out at Ratcliffe and the last plume of coal smoke disappears into history, Britain has set an example for the world. A testament to the power of innovation and the urgency of change, even if it means taking 142 years to stop using coal. But the fight isn't over. The planet is still in peril, and the race to protect it continues. So now it's up to the rest of the world to how they wish to write the next chapter.
And finally, in Argentina, thousands of parrots have invaded a vibrant town on the country's Atlantic coast, causing power outages along with other problems. Despite attempts by locals to scare the birds away using loudspeakers and laser lights, the resilient birds remain undeterred. Environmental watchers say this is a consequence of deforestation, which has driven flocks of parrots closer to human settlements. Our final report goes into detail.
Let's talk about parrots, with their dazzling green, yellow, and red feathers. They seem to have all the charm and grace to turn any dull landscape into a vibrant masterpiece. But, as beautiful as they are also wreaking havoc on Hilario Ascasubi, a town nestled along Argentina's eastern Atlantic coast. These colorful avian invaders have descended by the thousands, and the locals are at their wits' end, trying to rid themselves of these feathered troublemakers. Take a casual stroll around the town, and you will be greeted by a riot of color. Hundreds of parrots perched on electricity cables, swooping through the skies, and filling the air with constant chattering. But don't be fooled by their picturesque presence. These cheeky birds aren't just sitting pretty. They're biting through power lines, leaving the town in darkness more times than they can count. Not to mention the poop. With so many of them around, it's not just the lights and fans that are going out. It's the sheer amount of droppings that are turning the town into a minefield of bird waste.
The internet shuts down and you're disconnected. You have to call the company that services you, and that takes a while. They do it as fast as they can, but you are disconnected for a while, and we can't report or keep in touch. My radio show cuts out because without internet, it doesn't broadcast any other way. They bite and damage the cables. Water can then get into the wires when it rains and transmission is cut off. These parrots create daily costs and problems for us. It goes without saying that when the power goes out, there is no radio.
The people of Hilario Ascasubi aren't exactly thrilled to share their town with these unwanted guests. In fact, they've tried everything to get rid of them, blasting loud noises, flashing laser lights, you name it. But the parrots, in all their colorful defiance, have proven to be tougher than they look. Now, before we paint these parrots as villains, let's rewind a bit. This invasion isn't entirely their fault. Experts say the birds originally sought shelter in the town during autumn and winter.
before migrating south to the cliffs of Patagonia for breeding season in the summer. But the rapid disappearance of forests and hills has left these parrots with nowhere else to go. Argentina has seen a significant decline in forest cover, forcing these once wild birds to inch closer and closer to human settlements.
In the immediate future, we need to start to restore our natural environments, start recovering the hill environments, but until that happens, we have to think of strategies that allow us to live together in the most harmonious way possible in our towns.
Now, the parrots and people are stuck in a situationship that neither of them signed up for.
Burrowing parrots depend almost exclusively on the hillsides. Historically, they have fed on the food resources provided by this environment. Currently, the hillsides are disappearing. Estimates say that 4% of the forest is lost annually in the south of the province of Buenos Aires. It is causing the parrots to have no food available, and they are increasingly moving closer to the cities, where they find food, shelter, and water.
So, while the residents of Hilario Ascasubi battle it out with their avian adversaries, it's hard not to see the irony. In their relentless pursuit of expansion, humans have pushed nature to the brink, only to find themselves at the mercy of creatures they can't control. Nature, no matter how small or vibrant, always finds a way to remind us who's really in change.
That's all we have time for today. We thank you so much for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day.
Hello and a very warm welcome. I am Gurjeen Garland and you're watching Firstpost. In the next few minutes, we bring you the top 50 updates from around the world, only here on Fast and Factual. Let's get started. We begin in West Asia. Israeli forces have launched a ground operation in southern Lebanon. This comes hours after the Israeli War Cabinet approved plans for the newest phase of war against Hezbollah. Israel said its limited ground raids in Lebanon are being backed by Israeli warplanes and artillery. Israel said it was targeting villages in southern Lebanon. The military said the targeted areas posed an immediate threat to communities in northern Israel. Meanwhile, as cross-border attacks